Chapter 9. They lay in bed together until around noon and then got dressed and had lunch together. When they returned to Katie's room, she opened her laptop and checked her email. There was a reply from the Croatian woman. In response to your question, the healer is supposed to be able to cure people of any ailment simply by touching them. Of course, you understand that this is merely a legend. My contact would like to know if you know someone like that. Joe was reading over Katie's shoulder and said, "How is that possible? I can't heal other people. Maybe we are barking up the wrong tree here. Maybe a legend is just a legend." "No, too many pieces fit together," Katie said. "Are you sure you can't heal other people? Have you tried?" "Well, no, but you would think I would know what I can and can't do after over 100 years. Perhaps, but why don't you try to heal me?" "There's nothing to heal. You're fine." "How do you know? If you can read your own body, maybe you can read mine. Just try," Katie said and held out her hands. Joe took her hands in his, closed his eyes, and concentrated. "Nothing," he said after about a minute of trying. "I can't even feel what's going on inside your body, much less fix it." "Well, it was worth a shot," she said. "Maybe there is a trick to it that you haven't figured out yet. It's too bad I didn't come with a manual. You wouldn't read it anyway. You're a man," Katie said and smiled. She sensed his disappointment and wanted to cheer him up. "I can't argue with you there," Joe said before getting up to look out the window. He wanted to think. Katie replied to the email and said, "No, I don't know anyone with that kind of ability." The room phone rang to inform Katie that the auto glass guy was there to replace her window. She and Joe met him in the parking lot, and while he was working, Katie told Joe, "I need to go back home when he finishes the window. An investigative reporter position has opened up at the station, and they are considering me for the job. Showing up late today will look better than not showing up at all." "I understand," Joe said. "You need to do what is important for you." "It's my career. It is important to me, but that doesn't mean you are not. Why don't you come with me? You can stay with me until Saturday, and then we can come back here." "That is a tempting offer, Katie, but then what? You have your life and career in Milwaukee, and mine is here. I don't see that changing anytime soon." "Are you always so analytical?" Katie asked somewhat angrily. "I need to go back to my room and pack. I'll say goodbye to you before I leave." She quickly walked back to her room, leaving Joe standing in the parking lot. Joe walked to the front counter where Michael and Eric were standing. Eric said, "Miss Katie looked angry. What happened?" "She asked me to go home with her, and I said no." Michael looked at Joe and said, "Pops, I love you, but sometimes it seems you haven't learned anything in the last 100 years. You have a chance at real love here with a lovely woman that you clearly care about, but you are willing to let her slip through your fingers for what? Yes, she is not grandma, but she makes you happy. What is the purpose of life if it is not to be happy?" "It's complicated," Joe said. "Then uncomplicate it or embrace the complication. There is nothing wrong with complications. It's better than boring. I suppose you're right, Michael. What's the worst that can happen? What are you waiting for? Go get her." Joe walked quickly to Katie's room and met her as she pulled her suitcase out the door. They stopped and looked at each other for a moment, and Joe said, "I'm sorry, Katie. I was foolish to say no to you. I have always been an optimistic person, but suddenly I adopted a pessimistic attitude. That's not me. I have gotten so used to being comfortable that the thought of change scares me. But Michael pointed out that complicated is better than boring. And he's right. I want to go with you if you still will have me. I want you to complicate my life." Katie let go of her suitcase and kissed Joe. They kissed for several seconds until they both became aware of a couple that couldn't get by because they were blocking the hallway. They stepped aside, a little embarrassed, and Joe said, "Sorry, but this place has a way of igniting passion in people." Katie laughed and said, "That's one way to promote the resort." "Follow me," Joe said. "I want to pick up a few things before we go." He led her past the reception desk and into the office. 2 desks sat on the right side of the room, with a small space between them. The closest desk had a desktop computer with 2 monitors and a pile of manila folders stacked on the side. In the center was a large desk calendar with many notes scribbled on it. The far desk was relatively clean. A laptop sat on the desk, along with a notepad, a small basket with pens in it, and a photo of an old lady at the far corner. In front of the far desk stood 3 storage cabinets. Joe opened the far cabinet. It was filled with cameras and camera accessories. Some cameras were newer digital cameras, and others were very old, perhaps from the 30s or even earlier, Katie thought. There were also a few movie cameras from various eras. Joe took out what looked like a small black box and said, "This was my first camera. My mother bought it for me when I turned 10. It was shortly after my dad died, when I discovered that I was different from other people. I think she felt like I was in a rut and figured I needed something to get me out of it. It worked. I loved this little camera." "Not so little by today's standard," Katie said. "No, but in 1926 it was considered small." He pulled out another camera. This one looked closer to what Katie considered a real camera. Joe opened it so the lens popped out, revealing a bellows-type camera. "I took this one to war with me. Do you have photos from that time?" Joe pointed at a few photo albums at the top of the cabinet. "The Army didn't get everything," he said. Katie pulled down one of the albums and turned to the first page. It was an 8x10 photo of several soldiers standing in front of a tank, smiling. The next few pages were similar. All were photos of men standing in front of their equipment. Then, there was a photo of several burned-out vehicles and what looked like a charred corpse. She quickly flipped the page and saw a truck loaded with dozens of bodies. She slammed the book shut and said, "These are horrible. I can't imagine what you went through." My job was to raise morale by showing photos of happy Americans or unhappy Germans. Many of those photos would have been buried or destroyed if I gave them to the Army. I always thought it was the Nazis that were good at propaganda. "Everybody lies during a war," Joe said. "Those photos are important for history. You should publish a book or donate them to a museum." "I thought about donating them," Joe said. "I wanted to wait until there was no reason to censor them. Perhaps now is a good time." Katie handed Joe the book, and he put it back on the shelf. He then reached in and took out a newer digital camera and a telephoto lens. He placed them in a camera bag that he picked up from the bottom shelf. He closed the doors and said, "I got what I need here. We just need to pick up some clothes at my place, and then we can go." "It's nice that Michael gives you a place to store your stuff. Do you use that desk there, too?" she said, pointing to the desk with the laptop on it. "I only use the desk when I have photos to edit. As far as Michael letting me use this space, well, technically, this resort belongs to me. My wife and I bought it about 40 years ago. Several years ago, I put it in my daughter's name when I died and was reborn as Michael's son. She will pass it to me when she dies, and if I die first, then Eric will get 51%, and the rest will be split up amongst the great-grandkids." "Why give 51% to Eric?" Katie asked. "Because Eric is here, and I trust him to keep this place in the family." "How were you able to change your identity like that?" "It took me a while to learn the ropes, but you can get almost anything in this country for a price." "Does it feel weird being the brother of your great-grandson?" Katie asked. "A little, but I keep a low profile, so it's never an issue." "Well, we should probably get your clothes and hit the road," Katie said. "I have a boss to impress, and I can't do it from here." They went back to Joe's cabin, packed a few of his things, and then hit the road. The sun was shining, and the streets were clear, except for an occasional patch of ice. A classic rock station was playing on the radio, but Katie turned the volume most of the way down and said, "So tell me, Joe, what was it like growing up in the 20s? "It was very different than these 20s. For one thing, it was hot in the summer." "How is that different than summers today?" Katie asked. "Try to imagine living in a small apartment with 6 people and no air conditioning." "I didn't think about that. I bet only the super rich had air conditioners back then." "I didn't even know air conditioners existed before I was in my teens." "Did you meet your wife when you were young?" "I was 18. After I finished high school, I enrolled in a photography school. It's still around today, but it was very small back then. They would sometimes bring in people to pose for us so we could practice portrait photography. One day, Marie came in to pose for me, and it was love at first sight. Her family was somewhat wealthy, and she was much more cultured than I was. Her father initially disapproved of our relationship, but her mother liked me, and eventually her father came around too. Did Marie work too? Oh yes. After the war, I became somewhat successful as a freelance photographer. Several big magazines printed my photographs. I also sold prints at art shows and eventually opened my own gallery. Marie helped me every step of the way. She developed film, printed photographs, talked to clients, and helped with bookkeeping. She even learned the art of picture framing. I don't think I would have been successful without her. You really loved her, didn't you? With every fiber of my being. There was a moment of silence, and then Joe said, "If that Croatian woman is right, I might have been able to save her. Maybe I could have even kept her young." You can't beat yourself up over something you could not have known. Besides, it might not be true, or if it is, it might not be true for you. I suppose you may be right, Joe said, but I hate not knowing for certain. Katie put her hand on Joe's hand and squeezed but said nothing. What could she say? She wanted to help him, but didn't know how. This audiobook continues on the next video. For more information on this book and others by this author, please visit charleshuss.com.